to Flourish-Meant, the podcast on living life as you are meant to, so you can flourish. Welcome, everyone, and a special welcome to my wonderful, esteemed guest, Lori Wildenberg. She is a mom of 4 young adults and Mimi to 1. She's also passionate about family building so that you can build those connections that last a lifetime. She is a licensed parent-family educator. She's co-founder of 1 Corinthians 13 Parenting Ministry. She's a national speaker and lead mentor mom over at the Moms Together Facebook community page. Lori has also written 5 books, including the most recent release, The Messy Life of Parenting. Welcome, Lori. I'm so glad you're here today.
Tina, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And I'm excited about our topic today. You are an expert on this topic of navigating messy parenthood. I would love it if you would share with our audience about what is in your life the place where you became passionate about navigating parenthood when it gets messy, and how you feel compelled to reach people when they're in that place.
Well, Tina, I think life is always messy. Don't you think so?
I agree.
So we started off our parenting with it getting messy right from the start. We always expected to have 4 kids. That was our plan. And we thought that we would have 3 and then we would adopt our 4th, but God had other plans. So we ended up going through a lot of infertility and came into parenthood via adoption as our first child and with our first child. And it started off messy right away, just from the fact that when we went down to Colombia to adopt our first precious baby, the other 3 came the old-fashioned way, by the way. But when we went down to Colombia to adopt our baby, she was very sick, but we didn't realize it. We thought we had this really sweet, quiet baby, and she was actually severely dehydrated, which we didn't know until about probably 12 hours into holding her and realizing she wasn't acting like the other babies. And so we realized early on in our parenting journey that it's not going to be expected, right? Life is full of the unexpected. And so parenting, just like life, is going to be messy. And we needed to reach out for help. And that was the beginning of the journey of realizing we really need help in this parenting journey. Right from the start, God moved my heart in a way that I realized with parenting, we really need to be there to support and help each other. And so it started off right off the bat. And then we've had other things, as you can imagine, over the years where things haven't gone as we would have expected them to. And because of that, I've just got such a heart for parents who are in the midst of struggling with things they never expected. And we have had of our kids, we never expected that our teenage children would throw a party when we weren't at our house. And those sort of things also have come up in our lives. So what I'd really like to do, my passion is to help parents navigate those messy moments, whether they're messy during when you first have a baby and your baby isn't sleeping and you don't know what to do, or if it's messy in terms of behavior, what your kids are doing, or your kids aren't maybe getting the grades that you would expect them to get, or messy in terms of the type of relationships that they are drawn to. And God has given us various experiences in all of those areas. So anyway, what is hard for us in the moment, God can really use for the good to help somebody else.
I love that you're able to recognize the difficult places or the places where God can use us in ministry and in relationship with Him and with other people. And the importance of reaching out is a really key piece as well, because without reaching out, we don't get help. We don't experience the full benefit of God's blessings. And yet, that is one of the hardest things to do when we need it the most. How did you turn to other people or to God in the moments when you needed help the most?
Tina, this is like a really critical question. I'm so glad you asked that, because if we do not reach out for help, we can get into a very hopeless situation. And I do believe the hopelessness combined with the fierce independence that we have that runs through our American blood, we can get to a place of depression, anxiety, and even suicide is, my goodness, it is on the incline. It is rising at rapid rates. It has tripled in the last 10 years. And so we do need to reach out for help and then to use those opportunities later to help somebody else. But if Tom and I hadn't reached out for help regarding Courtney, our baby, when we were in Colombia, she very well may have died. And we needed to, we first of all hesitated to ask for help because we thought we're the parents now, we should be able to handle this. But we were in another country and we just didn't know what to do with a sick baby. I didn't even know what to do with a well baby, frankly. So a sick baby was way above my pay grade. And as God would have it, we did ask our liaison, what would she do if Courtney was her baby? And she said, I'd have her see my cousin. My cousin is a pediatrician. And when you ask for help, there's a couple cool things that happen in the midst of that. You see how God has been reaching out and trying and has someone right in front of you that can meet the need at that moment. And that is such a blessing to be able to see that and to experience that. You might not understand it right at the moment, but looking back, you'll see it. And I can see it in countless other times when we have been in difficult parenting situations and when we have not sort of retreated inside ourselves because we're either embarrassed or uncomfortable. But when we have reached out, we have found that there are people there. Tina, we're not alone in our struggles. And so often we think that we are, but we're not. And the Lord wants us to know we are not alone. And that's why He puts us in community and in relationship so that we are able to help one another. And that was such a good question. Thank you for asking that.
Well, thank you for highlighting how important it is to recognize that we're not alone. That is often one of the greatest myths that we experience as human beings. And it's a compelling myth because when we're in pain, all we notice is our pain and our problems are very loud. So feeling alone and feeling helpless are two of the biggest things that we can experience as parents. And one of the things that God doesn't want us to have to experience because He has created for us a community of fellowship of believers around us that we can reach out to. And I think it's important that you are developing ministries that help connect parents with others because helplessness is a terrible and frightening place to be as a parent. Because as a parent, the thing you want to feel is in control. You want to feel like you can protect that baby. And yet, most of the time, parents end up feeling helpless because we are not equipped to know everything and do everything.
Boy, that's for sure. And we really want to be equipped and we want to do everything. But in order to be equipped, often we need to rely on other people to help us with the equipping because they've gone through some experiences that we may perhaps have not. When my kids were little, and I had a friend, actually two friends, who also had 4 children, but they were a little further along in their parenting. And I can tell you, it was the most helpful thing to call one of the two of them up and say, oh my gosh, this potty training thing, who would have known that this was such a deal? And then to get the reassurance from them that everything was going to be okay, because they had the perspective that I didn't have. And again, perspective and being able to look outside the box a little bit is really important when it comes to having wisdom in walking through certain things. But it's difficult to have the perspective if you don't have another voice of wisdom coming in and speaking into your life. So I would really recommend to the moms out there, to the wives out there, to the women out there, to have a friend who's gone through a similar journey, but maybe is a few steps ahead, so that they can help you when you run into the mess.
That is fantastic advice, because in the middle of the mess, in the middle of the crisis, we definitely don't have perspective. And having someone else outside of it, on the outside edge of the quagmire, throw us a line so they can pull us out of the quicksand is really important. What are some other things that we need to know if we find ourselves in a messy place of parenting that we can do as steps to help us walk through that?
Well, of course, seeking help. I'm really going to recommend to parents to parent to interdependence, because when we do that, when we parent for connection rather than parent for independence, that permeates the whole family's way of looking at life. When we live a life for independence, then we are less likely and may even never seek help or seek encouragement from somebody else, because we think we've got it on our own. And we want to raise children that know that they can come to us and come to their siblings when, or even to their friends, when they have a situation that's difficult. So if we can, as parents, model that interdependence with our own friends and within the family, then I think we're off to a pretty good start when life gets messy. I'll give you a small example, Tina, that can be used in really any stage of parenting. So when my kiddos were little, having 4 kids, 5 and under, you can imagine what mealtime was like. It wasn't a meal till somebody spilled. Even if you had a sippy cup, somebody was going to spill. And it absolutely drove me crazy. And I had to come up with something that would actually help me. Now, this wasn't an altruistic way of coming about a philosophy. It was really for my survival and the children's survival. But what I ended up doing was I started to say, that's okay. Everybody spills. I'll help you clean it up. And the reason I said it in this order, that's okay, it normalized the spill. It normalized my reaction. It settled me down. My teeth stopped clenching. Everybody spills. Again, normalizing it. It's not the worst of the worst. This is something we can get through. By saying those 2 things, my kids knew Mom's not going to go crazy when I spill my milk. And then finally, I could have said, go grab a rag and clean it up. And sometimes I did have to say that because I was busy doing other things. But more often than not, I would say, that's okay. Everybody spills. I will help you clean it up. And the reason I said that is because the kids were still responsible for their spills and still needed the help clean it up. But they knew that I would come alongside them in the spills of life. So that philosophy actually carried us through all kinds of messy spills in life. That's okay. Everybody crashes the car. We will help you figure it out. So you can use that philosophy. And because we did that time after time after time, when our kids have been in difficult situations, they don't feel ashamed to come to us because they know it's going to be okay. They know it's normal, and we will come alongside them. And not in an enabling sort of a way, but in a way that actually is helping. There's kind of a fine line. So you have to determine which is helping and which is enabling. But those were things that had really helped us. And then also, when things would get messy for us in terms of parenting, we could think to ourselves, well, okay, that's okay. Other people have gone through this. I can reach out and find someone to help. And you do. You are able to find people who are in a similar situation. So I think if we can really work on our connection with our kids by doing the interdependence philosophy rather than raising them to be independent, that's going to be a very, very good place to start. And even if you haven't done that in the past, you can start now because God can make up time in the air. And you can even explain to your children, even your young adult children, hey, this is what I realized when you were growing up. I was training you for independence. And what I meant to train you for was responsibility. And you are so responsible, but we want you to know we want to be with you in the joys of life and in the sorrows of life and in the challenges of life. We want to come alongside you because it's our privilege and it's our honor and it's our blessing to be your parents.
That is such tremendous wisdom and insight for parenting. I've taught a lot of parenting models. I'm not sure I have seen this one before. And it is most based on grace and community and loving God, self, and others above all the other parenting models that I've seen. So I'm so glad you're sharing this. This is very exciting, and I think it can transform the way families stay connected and are able to help one another through the most vital crises of their lives as they grow.
Thanks, Tina. I'm really passionate about parenting for interdependence. And those 3 lines, they will stick in your head. That's okay. Everybody spills. I'll help you clean it up. And you can apply them in really any situation. And it was really cute. My youngest daughter was nannying to make some extra money for college. And she called me up the other day and she goes, Mom, you are not going to believe what I said to little Junebug. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what did you say? And she goes, she spilled. And you know what I said? And so we said it together. That's okay. Everybody spills. I'll help you clean it up. But the beautiful thing too is when you do that and you do it consistently or as often as you can, you're not going to do it every time, but as much as you can. If you are not in the room, but within earshot and one of the kids spills, they say it to each other. And that was music to my ears to hear my kids say, that's okay. Everybody spills. I'll help you clean it up to one another. So not only is that good for parent to child and in other relationships, but it's also a really big sibling relationship builder.
And a great community builder. It teaches your children to be able to be responsible in community with other people, their neighbors, their fellow believers, and other people outside of their family as well. So I love this model. This is really important for people to be listening and keying in on this. You said something about making sure that you're not enabling, but you are actually helping. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Right. Helping is something that's empowering, that lifts a person up, that encourages them to move on and encourages them to continue to go forward. Enabling is something that is stifling. It freezes a person. They end up feeling as if they are not empowered. They are not able to do something, and they can only have things become right or fixed or adjusted or helped by having someone else enter in. And
So enabling would be crippling. It would be making that
exactly,
person completely
yes,
dependent on you to be able to be powerful. And then helping is actually helping that person to be responsible
yes.
and to be able to be more capable on their own.
Yes, I
So
have an example of that because sometimes there is a tendency for us mamas to enable just because we don't want our kids to suffer, right? But so we had my oldest, Courtney, who was the one that I was speaking about that was ill as a baby. Anyway, she was working at well, she was working about probably about 45 minutes from our house, and we had a big snowstorm, and the roads were really bad. And she called us up and she was on my cell phone and she's like, Mom, I was scraping my windshield and the wiper broke off. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm thinking, how is she going to get home? How is she going to do this? Because she's going to need her windshield wipers. The snow is coming down big and we can't get to her. And that was one of the hardest things. I wanted to get to her to solve her problem for her. And actually, I guess when I say I mean my husband. I wanted my husband to solve the problem. And so, but we knew we couldn't get there right away. So I said, Courtney, you are mechanically minded. I want you to open up your glove box and you're going to find the owner's manual for your car. And you're going to figure out how to reapply, how to attach your wiper back on. And I know you can do this. I have every confidence in you that you can do this. Call me back when you've got it reattached. I hung up the phone and I looked at my husband. I said, she's never going to be able to do this. And we both kind of like laughed and prayed sort of at the same time, hoping that she'd be able to actually attach this wiper. Well, 10 minutes later, she called me back. She was thrilled. She had actually reattached the wiper and was on her way to making the drive back home. So that would be helping rather than enabling would have been if we would have gone there and fixed it for her.
that is a wonderful example. And I love that you have empowered her to have confidence in herself and her own ability to solve the problem. I think giving our kids the confidence they need to become problem solvers is also a really great parenting technique, especially when we look at how our kids are going to face messy situations on their own.
Yeah, we have to be a little brave in that too, because honestly, I was scared that she wasn't going to be able to do this. And I had to get over my own insecurities and fears. And I think sometimes we enable because we ourselves are afraid that they are not going to be able to rise to the task.
I think that if we're parenting, we need to constantly remind ourselves to parent out of love and faith instead of out of fear,
Yes,
because fear will get us in trouble every time.
that is so true. That's so true.
What are some major tips that you want to give to that parent that's listening right now, that's in a very messy crisis situation of their own parenting experience in life? What are some main things that you want them to know before we leave today?
Oh, first of all, the very first thing is that they are not alone. They need to know that first and foremost. They are not alone in their struggles. And then I think it's really important when they're going through hard times to reach out to somebody else, at least one other trusted person, so that they're able to talk with someone who is not just their spouse. Because when you are in a messy situation with your kiddos, that can be all consuming between husband and wife. And then you can end up having some collateral marriage damage. So it's important for both the husband and the wife to be able to have other people that they trust, that they can reach out to. I would also say that, and I know we hear this a lot, but self-care is actually really important. and to do your best to get some rest, even though it's hard to sleep. But try to get exercise and do that self-care, because if you're not healthy, physically healthy, it's very hard to deal with some of these big emotional things. The other thing is, be careful not to reject the child who's causing the mess. Make sure that you continue to let them know that you love them unconditionally. You may not agree with everything that they're doing, but you accept and love them no matter what. And it might be just a one-sided thing where you continue to reach out. Just as Jesus going after that lost sheep, he just kept pursuing, right? So what we need to do is make sure that our kids know, no matter what, we are there for them and we love them, even if we're not in agreement with what's going on. And, brace yourself, because there are going to be, during the mess, there's going to be some things that can come along that are going to be perhaps unexpected. There could be financial things. Sometimes when you have someone who is going through a hard time, often there's some financial piece to that puzzle, even sometimes legal things. So that I would encourage, just to be ready and to figure out what your boundaries are with finances, and how you may choose to help or not help, but not to enable. And one of the the biggest thing is to pray, and to pray without ceasing. And I know that when you're in a hard place, that's a hard thing to do. And we need to know that the Holy Spirit is praying and groaning on our behalf when we just flat out can't. And to ask those trusted friends to pray for and to pray with us. I think, as Oswald Chambers says, prayer is the greater work. And sometimes we think all I can do is pray, but that's a pretty great thing, because sometimes that is what you can do. And that is the best and the first place to go anyway. So just continue to reach out to your child and do as much as you can in the messy moments to spend time with that child as well. So continue to strengthen the relationship, because it is through the relationship that our influence comes.
That is tremendous advice. I so appreciate every piece of that. So important to remember each and every one of those things. And one of the things you alluded to that I think people might have missed was making sure that you stay grounded in your marriage. If you are married to the other parent of this child, then you need to make sure that you make a commitment during this crisis not to let it split you apart, because that can happen. And I've seen parents go through horrible things, but because they made sure that they committed to stay together and stay in prayer together and stay centered in God in their relationship with each other and not let it split them apart, their marriage survived the unthinkable crises that came into their lives. So I heard you kind of allude to that a little bit, but I wanted to make sure the listeners heard that piece as well.
Oh, that's good. And that reminds me too, because when you have a child who is going through hard things, sometimes the other siblings get pushed aside and they just kind of have to make do. And to be very aware of not letting the child who has gone astray, the prodigal, not letting that problem, that issue, that child take over everybody's life. And to make sure that you are fully aware of all of the people in the home, and they all need love and attention. And you don't want to be on automatic pilot with those other relationships, because those can fall apart as well.
Such a vital and critical piece. I am so glad you were here today, Lori. I wish I had more time, but I want to encourage listeners to reach out to you so they can get all the wealth of your wisdom and information through all the places where they can find you. Can you share with us how people can find you and how they can find all of your books, including your newest release?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Tina. I'm easy to find. You can find me at my website at LoriWildenberg.com, LoriWildenberg.com. I'm on Facebook, Lori Apple Wildenberg, but it's Appel. And also, you can find me at Moms Together on Facebook. And then I'm also on Instagram and a little bit on Twitter. So you can find me in those places. And you can find Messy Journey, How Grace and Truth Offer the Prodigal a Way Home, if you are the parent of a child who has stepped off the path. And you will find all kinds of helpful things through the book Messy Journey. And the newest book, The Messy Life of Parenting, Powerful and Practical Ways to Strengthen Family Connection, dives deeply into that spillage philosophy that I was talking with you about, interdependence and being interconnected. And those two books can be found, well, really anywhere. Of course, Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com are some ways you can get online, or you can go over to New Hope Publishers and you can get the books from them as well, or in your favorite bookstore. If they're not on the shelves, they can always order them if they're not there. So those are ways you can find me and find the books, and I would love to connect. So anyway, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lori. This has been fantastic. I hope that all of you find a way to connect with Lori and get all of her amazing resources, especially the new book from New Hope Publishers, so that you can learn all the details of this tremendous perspective and style of parenting. And I hope that all of you join us again next time on Flourish-Meant.